Hello, my name is Mark Madigan. I'm an ordinary Christian, hence the title of the channel. And this is my very first video. And just wanted to, I've been saying for the last month or so, this has come to me to do it. So today I've decided to do it. I've been a senior pastor for about, since 2000 and, well, officially I'd say 2010. Had my credentials since 1996, but I don't really count that because much of the time had passed where I was actually running from God more than living for God. And but by 2006, God turned me completely around, and I've understood what it means to trust Him with my life, trust Him with my salvation. Excuse me, I'm just going to adjust this a bit. As I said in the description, this is raw, meaning I don't really cut anything out or edit it. I want it to just be genuine and be me. I don't know if this is any good or what. As I was saying earlier, I've been a pastor since 2010. When I was a child, about 7 years old, my mom had told me of a incident that happened. My mom and dad told me an incident that happened. I had, when I was a baby, there was a Mennonite pastor, just down the Mennonite church was down a couple of streets from us. And we could walk to it or whatever, but he had come to visit us, and I was a baby, and he took me in his arms, and he said to my parents that I guess I was crying or whatever. He said to my parents that I was called to preach, to be a pastor. And my dad, my mom, they all laughed or whatever. So when she told me this story of what happened, all of a sudden, in my heart, it was like, yes, that's what I'm supposed to be. At such a young age, I really felt like that was the call on my life, was to be a pastor. And so I lived as a child striving to be as God would want me to be. I never really got in any fights. I was a big child. I was tall for my age. I was also was also big in terms of weight. Until I had a growth spurt, and then it all evened out. Kids, because of my size, I would get picked on quite a bit. And usually by those kids that I've really liked and wanted to befriend. And so I never really got in any fights. One time I remember I came home kind of bloodied. My brother, Paul, had gotten into a fight with this guy's older brother. And so this guy decided he was going to take it out on me in the playground. And so I was coming from underneath the slide, and the next thing I saw was this boot coming straight from my face and hit me right in the nose. And I was kind of bloodied. So I went home. I didn't really cry or anything. I just went home and didn't quite understand why the guy wanted to beat me up for anything. And so by the time I got home, my dad said, "So why didn't you fight him?" I said, "Jesus doesn't want me to fight." And he got mad at me. He did not understand my thoughts. or my attitude about not fighting. I just didn't see that something that Jesus wanted me to do, even at that age, which would have been 10 or so. So, anyhow, just a couple of times. Most of the time, most of the people like kids like me, but there was always this group when I went to high school, or it wasn't high school, it was, I guess, middle school. And that was grade 8. There was this group of, or no, it was grade 5. And I guess I was 13 years old, just after my dad died. And I went to school, and this, about 3 guys would harass me all the time. And I wouldn't say nothing. They kind of destroyed one of my projects. And the teachers knew this was happening to me. But I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't do anything. So one day the principal took me into his office and said, "Mark, they're just going to keep doing this." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm refusing to get angry. I'm refusing to fight about it." And he said, "That's, it wouldn't hurt if you did maybe get angry or something." So one day they started in on me, and I wasn't going to fight them, but I figured, okay, I'll pretend, or at least show that I'm angry or whatever. So I threw a desk across the room, and they got all scared, and they kind of went out, and the teacher walked in just as I did it. And so we were all sent down to the office, and the principal told the other 2 kids, said, "Listen, I know what's been happening, and that I'm going to give Mark permission, if you keep harassing him, to hit you guys directly square in the nose." And all that harassment stopped. If I would have known throwing a desk across the room would have stopped that, I probably would have done it earlier. But then I also got the principals backing me on that. So then nothing, there was no fighting until grade 9. I went to a Christian high school. My dad had died, so my parents, things were rough at home. So I was decided if I'm going to be a pastor, I needed to learn the Bible. So I decided I wanted to go to Eden Christian College, which was in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario at the time. And the church I was going to was a Mennonite church. It was a Mennonite college, but they wouldn't agree to me going to sponsor me or support me because my older brother had went, and they didn't like the way he turned out. So they weren't going to sponsor me at all. And so I talked to my youth pastors, who was Carl and Janet Jansen, and said, if you could get me a job on a farm, or even to live on the farm, and I would work and I would pay towards the tuition. And they said, sure. So I was going there, and I was in the dorm, and no, I didn't pay it all off out of the money I worked on. I fell a few times and spent money on things I shouldn't have. And actually a lady from the church, a friend of my mother's, she actually paid the last 700 and change off. And I've never been able to catch up with her or find out where she is to pay her that back. One day, if the Lord bless me to, I'll make sure to be able to do that, because that was a generous thing she did for me at that time as a 18-year-old. But I thank God for the experiences. So this one guy, he was, we'd be in the gym playing sports. I was in the dorm, so it'd be after school and stuff. And he threw the ball at me one time square in the face. And he made no bones about he didn't like me or whatever. And he always seemed to try to hurt me. So one night I did get angry and I threw the ball at him. And then I told him that, the only reason he had friends was because he was rich. And I just went through a lot of stuff. And apparently that was all it took, because he went to the dorm parent crying, and the dorm parent came to me and said, what this isn't like you, what happened? So I took it, and I, took them saying I was wrong and this and that. I didn't feel I was wrong, because I feel I was justified, because he wouldn't stop. And nobody else was really saying anything to stop it. So, but anyhow, it stopped. And that was the last ever incident in my life that I really, in terms of fighting, had to do anything. And what does all this have to do with today? I have no idea. Like I said, it's my thoughts. It's just a raw coverage of what's going through my mind now. So anyhow, today it's December rather, December the 10th, Tuesday. It's raining outside. I'm getting ready to go to a doctor's appointment. I had bariatric surgery on the 25th of November, and I'm seeing a new primary doctor today, just to have one that knows. And I met her at the hospital when they were doing the surgery, so she knows all about the surgery. And I thought, if I'm going to have a primary physician, that it would be best if they knew everything that I was going through physically. So so I'm going through this. So on my 10 days, so that was December 5th, I went and saw the surgeon, and he upgraded me from liquids to soft foods. And because the instructions are generic, because everybody's different, me and my wife are trying to just, kind of get the food intake and all of that straight. So 2 days ago, I guess I was, my wife had cooked up some eggs and some mashed potatoes. She put, and a chicken salad. So she put the mustard in the chicken salad, and the eggs and the mashed potatoes had garlic. Now, I love garlic normally, and I always complain to my wife for not putting enough garlic in anything. So, since the surgery, I've noticed my taste buds have changed, or have exemplified in some ways. So when I taste, there may not be much in it, but it tastes like there's a whole lot. So when I was having the eggs and the mashed potatoes, it seemed like there was way too much garlic, and I really didn't like it. But I ate it, and then I ate the chicken salad. So we're just having ounces of food right now, and so chicken salad, and all of a sudden I had the worst heartburn. I've never had heartburn in my life. I had the worst heartburn ever, and it was like around noon, about 12 noon, and I had such bad heartburn, and I was praying and asking God for help. It was so bad. And I called my wife and asked her to come home from work, which I typically don't do, because it was because she's working. And I'm retired right now until my body and everything gets changed. I just emigrated to the States. Like I said, we live in Humboldt, Texas. So I was just waiting, and so we talked as she came home on the phone. And when she got here, I also called the surgeon at his office, and I guess by the time they called back, they told me I could take another antacid, another acid reflux pill that I was only supposed to take once a day. They said it was okay for me to take another one. And but everything eventually subsided and I was fine. But it took like almost 3 hours for everything to calm itself down. And so I thought, okay, no more everything, just plain food from now on. And so that's what we were doing. And then just last night, I started having needed vegetables, so incorporated carrots, mushed up carrots, blended pureed carrots in a little, like 2 ounces or so. And so I was having that, and I don't really feel hungry or feel when I'm full yet. Feeling of full is beginning of pain, so then I stop. So I had that last night and started to get pain, so I stopped. But it became full-blown heartburn. It was so bad. It almost, and not only that, I started to throw up a bit. And it was just so bad. And I was praying, and we were praying. My wife was praying for me. We called the surgeon. He actually called back and said, that when we told him how many ounces of fruit I was eating, he said, cut that in half. It was only like 8 ounces. He said, no, you should only be doing 4 right now. But there was nothing in the instructions to say 4 ounces or anything. So we've been going this by ear, and, but because it's a generic instructions, that's why it's different for everyone. So I had such bad heartburn, and by the end, and it just would subside every time I threw up a little bit. And then finally, after about 2-3 hours, I had one big throw up where basically everything I had just eaten came all the way out. And I was fine. The pain was gone immediately, and I was fine. So this is a journey to the learning curve to figure out what I can have, what I can't have, how much of what I can have I should have. It's all kind of learning. I am losing weight. Was down another pound yesterday from the day before. So it's slow and sure, and I'm thanking God for it. But, on this video, it's just kind of a get-to-know me video. I hope, I trust I'll be able to do another one tomorrow and keep this up for however long God says. But there are some things I want to talk about in the scriptures as well, that God has shown me, and that I think is important for us all to learn. And, though I'm not pastoring right now, and I don't even have pastor's credentials right now, God, the other day I've been going back to school in a sense. I never did go to Bible college. I was under Pastor Ron Jones for about 24 years, of which 9.5 years I was running from God and was away from the church, away from my family. Me and my wife were separated. I was running, and God kind of taught me as I was running from Him. I don't know how else to explain it, because by the time I turned back to Him and called on Him 9.5 years later, He was there. And He changed me completely, my mind. He showed me that one of my biggest problems. And in the church, sometimes I don't think people realize when they tell people, listen, you can't live this life by yourself. You need to live it according to the power of Jesus, and let Jesus change you. But then in the same breath, they also tell you, you got to do, this is what you got to do. You got to pray, you got to read your Bible, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it seems like what you got to do is the bigger part than what Jesus has to do. So, and I would try and do what I could do. I'd keep if I even thought about a woman, if I lusted about a woman, I would feel guilty, and I'd say, God, forgive me, God, help me. I would turn this way, going into a mall. There's a beautiful woman, and I knew I was lusting. Say, God, help me. I'd be turning that way. God, help me. The only other thing would be to put a bag over my head, but then I wouldn't be able to see in front. So it was like, oh, and so and I would try to not swear or curse. I wouldn't swear or curse. That was never a huge thing for me until I finally just said, God, I knew there was always some sin that I was committing. And so I said, God, if I can't be perfect, you talk about being perfect, people say we're supposed to be perfect. And if I can't be perfect, then why bother? If I can't live this life the way I should, then why bother? I give up. And so I gave up. I thought my wife and my daughter, who was maybe 1 or 2 at the time, would be better off without me because I'm the sinner. They were living according to what they believed and what God would have them, I thought. So I'm the one that's the problem here. So I left. I left the church. I was under Pastor Ron, and I just split one day. And usually the first place I go to is is a bar or someplace to pick up a woman. And sure enough, I did that. And I do that. And I ended up, taking a bus out of Toronto and ended up going to Kingston, Ontario. And first I went to hitchhike my way up the other direction. I went to Parry Sound and Portobello, Sudbury, then from Sudbury, Gravenhurst to Aurelia, and Aurelia, but I ended up in Kingston, where I got work at the DuPont plant on the cleaning crew. Then I was one of the 2 people, Adam, a friend of mine that I made while I was there. We became the first 2 people on Ian Martin's industrial crew in the DuPont plant, cleaning the machines and cleaning the floors in the basement while the oil and stuff would be. And then, I left, tried to reconcile with my wife. But before that, I found out, I guess the one person I was with, she got pregnant with my daughter Chelsea, who I love very much. And so I ended up going back to be with her mother till she was born. And I was just saying to God, there's no way now, this is what I'm doing. And God said, God had other plans, because I still couldn't see if I couldn't be perfect, why live for him? Why, if I couldn't do the right things, why, if I felt like I was pretending all the time, it wasn't worth it. So God, through those years, taught me some things. And I had one dream one night about preaching about a word that God didn't expect us to be perfect. Because if we were perfect, we wouldn't need Jesus. That God expected us to call on him and ask him to forgive us, and that he would change us, that the Holy Spirit would be the one doing the changing, and all we had to do was trust him to change us. Had another dream about preaching another sermon about, you know, God doesn't have plan A, B, C, or D for you. He only has one will, one plan for your life. And that plan is fulfilling right now in whatever situation we're in. And even where I was, God knew what it would take to get me from point A to point B to point C. And he was using even the mistakes, even the sins, to get me to where I was supposed to be, physically as well as spiritually. And the third one was that God was going to still use me, that I didn't miss out on what God had for me. In fact, it was all part of the journey and his plans for me. And so I was, by the time that really sunk in, I was ready to turn back to God and say, okay, if you can get me out of this situation I'm in, I'll get out. And the very next week, Pastor Ron called me, and but understanding that God didn't expect me to be perfect, understanding that God only had one will and that I didn't miss out on what I was supposed to do, but that all the different things that I've gone through made me a better pastor, and the type of pastor that God wanted me to be, a pastor who could show mercy and compassion and not judgment, and not because of the things that I've done, the depth that I fell in terms of my own depravity and seeing the depravity of the flesh and even being scared of it at times. I understand a little bit of what people are going through that don't know God and that are suffering and just trying to get through this life the best way they know how, and are just being led by their own carnal desires rather than by the Holy Spirit. And that God will reach down and call you out of that and let you know he has a plan for your life. That isn't, you haven't missed out. God can still use you. You can still do right things and wonderful things for the Lord. And I can have compassion on those in the church who have fallen, compassion on those in the world who are reaching up for a hand, and give them a hand no matter what they've done or been through, because of some of the things I've done and been through that I'm so ashamed of. One of the top things I learned, and this was through Brother Ron, he never gave up on me all those years. Other pastors were telling him that I was no good, that I wasn't even a Christian, that I shouldn't even be. He shouldn't have wasted his time on me. But not once did he fail to call, did he fail to check in on me, did he try to speak God's truth to me to turn me around. And when I turned around, he was there for me. And my family was there for me. God reconciled it all back together. And my wife and my daughter Lydia and even my daughter Chelsea was welcomed into the family. And it was like, it was something only God could do. So that's the type of person I pray that I still am today. One full of compassion and mercy. One who will not give up on people, but will continue to pray and continue to do whatever I can do to be a help. And I pray these words that I begin to preach or speak out in the next few videos will be ones that will encourage and maybe cause you to look to God if you don't know him, and see what God does. It's a mighty God that I serve. Jesus is wonderful. And I love him, even though I mess up sometimes and I have to ask for forgiveness. Even though I go through some things where there's pain and loss, yet Jesus is there. He promised never to leave me nor forsake me. So this is the first video, and I'm signing out now. God bless you, whoever's watching. And may this touch your life, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.